They said her father gave her away like a bag of yam, but the man she was given to would one day change her life forever. In the dry, red-soiled village of Elmsworth, where dreams dried up before they could form, Grace lived like a shadow. At just 19, life had carved her into silence. Her mother was long gone, and her father, once kind, had withered into a bitter drunk. Then came the stepmother, ruthless, loud, unforgiving. She made Grace sweep the compound, fetch water, pound yam, farm, cook, and serve without eating. Grace was a housemaid in her own home, punished for simply being alive. The neighbors saw everything, but no one dared to speak. That evening, as the sun hung low and the air turned orange, Grace was bent over, scrubbing a cooking pot behind the kitchen, when she heard her name. "Grace!" her father barked from inside. "Come here!" She wiped her hands and stepped in, her heart already racing. Her father sat on his mat, reeking of dry gin, and beside him stood a man, dusty clothes, patched sandals, and tired eyes. It was Daniel, the village laborer who worked on people's farms for food and barely spoke to anyone. "Sit down," her father said. Grace remained standing. "What's going on?" Her father grunted. "Daniel has worked on my land for months. I can't pay him, so I'm giving you to him. As wife." The room fell silent. Grace thought she misheard. "You're... what? Are you deaf?" her father snapped. "He's taking you to the city. That is your bride price. Be grateful." Grace looked at Daniel, her eyes wild with confusion. "You're giving me to him? Just like that?" Mrs. Thomas, her stepmother, leaned against the door, smirking. "One less mouth to feed." Grace dropped to her knees. "Please, Daddy, please don't do this." But her father picked up his drink and waved her away. "Get your things. He's leaving at dawn." Daniel had said nothing, not a word, just stood there, eyes on the ground like a man ashamed of his own shadow. That night, Grace packed what little she had, a wrapper, an old dress, and a plastic bag with her mother's scarf inside. No one hugged her. No one said goodbye. Only her little stepbrother Sam peeked from behind the door, wiping his eyes as she walked into the dark with a stranger. The journey was long. The bus rattled through villages, towns, and forests. Grace sat by the window, numb. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. Her whole life had been exchanged for unpaid farm work. And Daniel, he said nothing the entire ride, just stared ahead, deep in thought. Every so often, he glanced at her and looked away. They arrived in the city at night. Grace had never seen anything like it. Bright lights, cars, loud people walking fast. Her chest tightened with fear. They took a small tricycle to the end of a quiet street. At the gate of a large compound, Daniel knocked. A guard let them in. Grace's eyes widened. The place was big. Too big for someone like Daniel. They passed the main house and stopped at a neat, smaller building tucked in the corner. "This is where I stay," Daniel said. "I'm a security guard here now. The madam lets me live here for free." Grace said nothing. The room was small. One bed, a curtain, clean sheets. She looked around, still standing by the door. "You can sleep on the bed," Daniel said. "I'll take the mat." She stared at him. "I didn't bring you here to hurt you," he said quietly. "Eat. Rest. Tomorrow I'll explain everything." And for the first time in her life, Grace did not sleep with fear. Only questions. Grace woke to the scent of something warm. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. No shouts, no banging pots, no insults from her stepmother, just the distant hum of city birds and the smell of boiled yam. She sat up slowly on the clean bed. Sunlight poured through the curtain. Daniel was outside, sweeping again. Quiet, careful. Grace rose and stepped into the kitchen. A small pot simmered gently on a kerosene stove. boiled yam, palm oil, and a pinch of scent leaf. She hadn't tasted food made with peace in a long time. "Good morning," she said softly. Daniel looked up. "Morning. Food is ready." She nodded and sat. They ate in silence. Not awkward, just unfamiliar. She watched him, the way he ate without greed, how he cleaned his plate and washed it right after. Nothing about him matched the man the village had mocked. After breakfast, he spoke. "I know this isn't how you planned your life." She glanced up. "I didn't plan it either," he continued. "But I won't force you to do anything. If you want to leave, I'll find a way to help you." Grace stared. Was this a trick? "You mean it?" Daniel nodded. "You've already been through enough. I didn't come into your life to add more pain." Something inside her softened, but only slightly. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. Later that day, Daniel stepped out to buy a phone charger. Grace stayed back to clean the room. As she swept beneath the bed, her broom caught something, a small metal drawer tucked into the bottom of the wardrobe. It was locked. She hesitated, then knocked on it gently. It didn't open. Her eyes lingered on it for a moment. Then she finished sweeping and quietly stepped away. But the drawer stayed in her mind like a whisper she couldn't ignore. That night, she sat on the edge of the bed as Daniel tightened a broken nail in the door hinge. The light bulb above them flickered faintly. "Why do you stay so quiet?" she asked suddenly. He looked up. "What do you mean?" "You barely speak. Even when my father gave me away, you didn't argue. You didn't protest. You just stood there like it didn't matter." Daniel stood and wiped his hands. "Because I wasn't angry." Grace frowned. "Why not?" "I was relieved." "Relieved?" He nodded slowly. "Because I've liked you for a long time, Grace. I just never had the right to say it." Her heart stuttered. "I used to watch you in the market. Not in a creepy way," he added quickly. "Just quietly. I saw how you bought cheap tomatoes but still gave some to the old woman near the gutter. I saw how you carried water for your siblings when your arms were shaking." He sat down beside her. "I knew you were too good for a man like me, so I stayed back. But when your father offered you instead of money, I didn't laugh. I didn't question. I saw it as fate opening a door." Grace stared at him, speechless. "I didn't marry you to own you," he said softly. "I married you hoping you'd see me one day." Silence fell, but it wasn't empty. Grace lay down, staring at the ceiling, her heart confused. The city was loud, but this house, this man, made it quiet in her soul. Still, as her eyes drifted closed, her mind returned to that locked drawer. She hadn't opened it, but something in her had. It had been 2 weeks since Grace arrived in the city. Each day, she swept the small compound, cooked in the quiet kitchen, and shared silent meals with Daniel. He kept his promise, never touched her, never raised his voice. In fact, he barely spoke unless she started the conversation. He had given her peace. But peace isn't always the absence of noise. Sometimes it's the silence that makes you curious. Grace couldn't stop thinking about that drawer. One afternoon, while Daniel was at the gatehouse attending to a delivery, Grace found herself alone again. The room was clean, too clean. Everything in Daniel's life was tidy, quiet, in control. But something didn't fit. She opened the wardrobe slowly. The drawer was still there, metal, small, locked. She placed her hand on it. No movement, no sound. Just a growing need to understand the man who had married her without asking for her love. Suddenly, the front door creaked. Grace turned, startled. It was Daniel, holding 2 plastic bags and a bottle of cooking oil. "I got more rice," he said casually. She straightened quickly. "Okay." He looked at her, then at the open wardrobe behind her, but he said nothing, just walked past and placed the items on the table. That night, Grace sat outside on the small bench near the compound fence. The moon lit the ground like silver cloth, and for once, she wasn't thinking about her pain. She was thinking about Daniel. Why did a man so careful feel like a man hiding something? She spoke without turning. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel was leaning against the wall nearby. "Go ahead." "Where did you live before coming to Elmsworth?" He paused. "Lagos." "What did you do there?" "A little of everything." She turned to him slowly. "Why did you leave?" Daniel looked down at his hands. "Because I got tired of pretending." Grace blinked. "Pretending to be what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, sat beside her, and took a slow breath. "You want to know the truth?" Grace nodded. "I came to Elmsworth to disappear. I was tired of the noise, the expectations, the fake friendships. I wanted to find someone who would see me when I had nothing." "You mean your family?" He hesitated. "They have more money than they know what to do with. But they don't have peace. I left that life behind because it nearly destroyed me." Grace looked at him, her voice quiet. "So, who exactly are you, Daniel?" He stared at her, then smiled faintly. "I'm the man who cleaned his floor because he hoped one day a woman like you would sit on it." Her heart fluttered, but her mind sharpened. She whispered, "That drawer, what's inside it?" He looked away. "Things that remind me who I was, and why I had to become someone else." She stood slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. "You know," she said, "for someone who says he left the world behind, you still keep its souvenirs." Daniel didn't stop her as she walked back into the house. But as she crossed the room, her hand grazed the top of the locked drawer, softly, almost without thinking. And then he spoke. "Grace, when you're ready to see who I really am, I won't hide it anymore." She turned, eyes narrowed. "And what if I don't like what I see?" Daniel looked at her, eyes steady. "Then I'll accept that the world failed me twice." The morning started with rain, soft, steady, and quiet. Grace stood under the shelter outside, watching droplets dance across the concrete like they had somewhere to be. Daniel had left early to run errands, leaving behind his usual silence and that drawer that now felt louder than ever. She had dreamt about it the night before, a key, a box, a flash of something gold. When she woke up, her heart was racing. She needed to know. A knock at the compound gate broke her thoughts. She wiped her hands and walked to the entrance. When she opened the small side door, a woman stood there, tall, elegant, dressed in a rich green blouse and black skirt, holding a leather handbag and an umbrella. "Good morning," the woman said. Grace stepped back. "Good morning." "I'm looking for Daniel," she continued, her tone smooth but assertive. "My name is Mrs. Leona Grant. I'm his family's legal representative." Grace's breath caught in her throat. "Family? Legal representative?" "I'm his wife," she said cautiously. The woman's eyes flickered, then softened. "I see. May I come in?" Grace hesitated, then nodded. She led her to the small house, offered her a seat, and poured her a cup of water from the table jug. Mrs. Grant sat with perfect posture, examining the room. "Let me be direct," she said. "Daniel's family is concerned. He disappeared over a year ago. They thought he had given up his inheritance, walked away for good. But then one of the private bank accounts under his alias was activated. Here." Grace didn't respond. Her mind was spinning. "I was sent to confirm his status and to ask him to return. His father is ill. The family empire is falling apart. They need him. Grace found her voice. He said he left that world behind. Mrs. Grant smiled, polite but sharp. Men say many things when they're hiding. Grace's chest tightened. And if he doesn't want to go back? Then he loses everything. The inheritance, the business, the legacy. It all gets transferred to his younger brother who's, let's say, less grounded. Grace stared at her. Daniel never told me any of this. Mrs. Grant took a sip of water. Then maybe you should ask yourself why. The words stung. Grace sat still, trying to steady her heartbeat. Mrs. Grant stood. I'll return in 2 days. Give him this. She handed over a slim white envelope with a golden seal. The same seal Grace had seen once before. Then she walked out into the rain like she had never been there. Daniel returned just before sunset. The clouds were clearing. Grace was seated at the small table, the envelope in front of her. He paused in the doorway when he saw it. She came, he said quietly. Grace looked up. You knew she would? Daniel nodded. I was hoping I had more time. She stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel walked in, sat across from her, and placed his keys gently on the table. Because I was afraid. Not of losing the money, but of losing this. He gestured around them, the tiny room, the cracked wall, the simple life. You said you wanted someone who'd love you for nothing, Grace whispered. But you never gave me the truth. Daniel's voice cracked. I didn't lie to you, I just delayed the truth. I didn't want to test your love. I wanted to protect it. Grace looked at the envelope again. What happens if you don't go back? Daniel exhaled. My brother inherits everything, and he'll use it to ruin people. Grace stood slowly. Then maybe it's time to open that drawer. He nodded, got up, walked to the wardrobe, and pulled out a key from his pocket. The drawer clicked open. Inside lay the truth. Documents, deeds, account statements, and a photo of Daniel in a designer suit, standing next to a man with a presidential handshake. Grace looked down at the papers, then up at her husband. She didn't feel betrayed. She felt ready. Grace didn't sleep that night. She lay awake beside Daniel, her thoughts louder than the ticking wall clock. The drawer was still open, its contents still real, but what stayed with her most wasn't the money, the documents, or even the photo. It was the fear in Daniel's voice when he said he might lose this, her, the life they built in silence, the love he never forced, but fought quietly for. By morning, the rain was gone. Daniel was already up, seated outside with his head in his hands. Grace walked out, a cup of warm water in one hand, the envelope in the other. I want to come with you, she said softly. He looked up, surprised. To where? To see your family, to meet them, to understand the life you ran from. Daniel frowned. You don't have to. I do, she cut in gently. Because if I'm your wife in this small life, I want to be your wife in the big one too. His eyes watered. She smiled faintly. But I won't lose myself in it, and I won't let you lose yourself either. 2 days later, they walked through the golden gates of a private estate. Limousines lined the driveway. Uniformed guards saluted. Daniel didn't respond. He just held Grace's hand like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Inside the mansion, everything smelled of marble and power. In the grand hall, Daniel's father sat weakly in a leather chair, IV tubes on his wrist, bitterness still sharp in his stare. So, the farmer returns, he said coldly. Daniel didn't flinch. I came for peace, not approval. His father scoffed. And who is this? My wife, Daniel said firmly. Her name is Grace. The old man's eyes narrowed. She looks like a house girl. She's the reason I came back, Daniel said, voice steady, and the reason I'll only stay if I lead on my own terms. The room went silent. Then his mother, seated quietly beside the fireplace, stood up and approached Grace. She looked her up and down, then smiled. "You've given him eyes I've never seen in years," she said softly. "That means more than all this gold." In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Daniel officially resumed as the head of the family company, but this time, he brought something new: humility, compassion, and grace by his side. While the boardroom struggled to understand him, the staff did not. They loved him, and they adored the woman he called his compass. Grace didn't care for luxury. She still cleaned her own room, still cooked for Daniel on Sundays, still laughed at his quiet jokes and reminded him to breathe. And one crisp morning, she walked across a university campus, holding her admission letter in one hand and Daniel's hand in the other. On the day she graduated, top of her class, Daniel stood up during her award speech. He walked to the stage, placed a kiss on her hand, and said through the mic, "I once married a girl the world called worthless. Today, she's the woman who rebuilt everything I lost." The crowd roared. Tears filled Grace's eyes. She smiled, turned to the audience, and said, "They thought I was a burden, but he gave me a home. And now I've built more than a life. I've built a legacy."